Hi, I'm State Treasurer Dennis Milligan.
And I'm Nate Coulter, Executive Director of the Central Arkansas Library System.
Thanks for joining us for our 4-week financial education series, a partnership between your State Treasurer's Office and the state's largest library system.
We've teamed up to bring you 4 presentations about financial education. We're honored to have some local experts join us to provide these sessions, which will cover a wide range of topics.
That's right, Nate. We'll start with understanding the basics, learning how to develop a budget, then move on to managing debt, saving for education, and saving money for your yearly taxes.
But it doesn't stop there. We'll also look at how making plans now can help you later with some of life's major changes, like marriage or divorce, dealing with an illness, or the sudden loss of a loved one, to caring for an elderly parent. There's a lot to consider.
There is. In the end, we hope these sessions inspire you to take control of your finances, no matter what your economic situation is.
And we hope these sessions and our presenters educate and encourage you to keep learning, no matter your age.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get started.
Let's go.
I'll go ahead and start for our presentation tonight. First of all, I want to thank those of you who are joining us from wherever you are around this cold, blustery city tonight. My name is Fran Jansen, and I'm with the Arkansas State Treasurer's Office. And on behalf of the State Treasurer and Nate Coulter, who is the Executive Director of Central Arkansas Library System, we want to thank you for joining us tonight for the session entitled Understanding Financial Basics. And it will be presented by Kara Wilkins, who is with BankOn Arkansas. But before I hand it over to Kara, just a few housekeeping details. Everyone who's attending tonight will be muted. And however, if during the course of Kara's presentation you have a question, please feel free to go ahead and submit your question via chat. And then at the conclusion of the presentation this evening, we will open it up for questions in a chat or verbal. So we'll be monitoring the chat in the chat box. And then finally, tonight's session will be recorded, and so we will be uploading that video to both the Central Arkansas Library System website as well as the State Treasurer's website in a day or two, and it will be available to watch again, or if you wanted a friend or family member to see it, it would be a way for you to share that link with them as well. So with that, I think I will hand the baton over to Kara. And again, thank you. This is Kara Wilkins with BankOn Arkansas. Thank you.
Thanks, Fran. I appreciate you for introducing me and inviting BankOn Arkansas to join you all today. So I'd like to pull up a few slides, if that's okay, and then we'll walk through the presentation. As Fran mentioned earlier, we will have some time for Q&A here at the end of the presentation, and I welcome your questions and thoughts and comments on today's presentation about understanding financial basics. So give us 1 second. So I'll tell a little bit about BankOn Arkansas while we get our presentations pulled up. And so BankOn Arkansas is an initiative that is hosted statewide here across Arkansas. And we work with banks and financial institutions from across the state to help individuals get access to banking in a safe and affordable manner. And so BankOn Arkansas bank accounts are available at 14 different institutions, which I'm going to tell you about here in a moment. And not only can you open these accounts, they have special kind of criteria with them. One of the biggest is that they are no overdraft accounts. And so you can get a certified BankOn account at one of these 14 financial institution partners and not have to worry about your account going into overdraft or you incurring Nsf fees. And so that's really kind of one of the biggest things about BankOn Arkansas. And so in addition to us opening and having these accounts, we also have what we call the BankOn Arkansas Coalition. And the coalition works with nonprofit partners to help get information about these BankOn accounts out through nonprofit partners so we can get people signed up. So we are one of the state's largest coalitions that work towards getting individuals into banking and making sure that they have some sort of financial institution that they can go to in order to do, normal things like cash your checks or deposit or, savings and all of those things. And so we work with partners like Our House and the State Treasurer's Office, CALS, Goodwill Industries, and many other partners across the state so we can make sure that we, again, have places where individuals can connect to make sure that they have somewhere to go do their basic banking. Perfect. So the slides are coming up now. And again, if you have any questions at any point in the presentation, just throw them in the chat and we will come back to them here in a moment. So perfect. So I've given you a little bit of an introduction. And again, this is just a little bit more about what BankOn Arkansas is. I think I've explained we're kind of an initiative and the work that we're doing here in the state. Next slide. So again, we're the state's largest coalition that are working on financial health of Arkansans. And we do that in a variety of ways. So not only do we use the nonprofit partners that I previously talked about, but we also work with cities. We work with government agencies, again, like the State Treasurer's Office. We work with different places just to get out information about BankOn so people can learn more about it. The city of Little Rock is one of our partners. And we do work with them to make sure that the city employees have access to bank accounts, usually through a certified BankOn account. You can go to the next slide. Maybe. There we go. So for today, I did want to go back to the agenda, if that's okay, really quickly. Yeah, I just want to give you all an overview of what we're going to do today. So we're briefly going to explain why banking is important and really kind of go over some of the basics of banking. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about how do you open a BankOn Arkansas account if you're interested. And then again, we'll open the Q&A. So that'll kind of be our agenda for today. So let me launch right into why banking is important. And so in response to COVID-19, banking and having access to a bank account has become increasingly important for families. When physical bank branches were temporarily closed, many Arkansans relied on online banking in order to receive remote deposits. And that includes wages, government benefits, unemployment benefits. It also helped people to be able to electronically pay their bills and manage their credit and debit online. And so when people don't have access to an account at a financial institution, they're vulnerable to a lot of financial threats, right? So the biggest thing is you can have sky high service fees from check cashing places. We don't have to deal with predatory lending as much here in Arkansas, but predatory lending is a big thing. And, again, it traps people in cycles of debt. And then again, if you do keep cash on hand, it could be detrimental if you lose that cash or if you suffer a loss or if your money is stolen because it's not in a FDIC secured bank account. So, one theft could wipe you out. Uh-oh. Maybe. Okay. Oh, is the screen still on? Because I can't see it. Sorry. I'm assuming it is. There we go. Okay. So So again, that's just a few reasons why people are and banking is important. So there are two things when we talk about people being not connected to a bank. You can be unbanked or underbanked. And so in 2019, 7.1% of Arkansans were unbanked. And what unbanked mean is you do not have access to a bank account. And so we had roughly 6,500 Arkansans who did not have any access to any bank account and are relying on, again, these non-traditional forms of places in order for them to be able to do basic financial transactions like Western Union, or again, a check cashing place, or Walmart, or using bank cards. Using the debit Visa cards. Those are other ways that people are still doing their transactions when they're unbanked. When you're underbanked, that means that you may have a bank account. And we had about 1/4 of Arkansans who are underbanked. So you have a bank account, but it really just may be that the bank account is not working for you, which really means that you're still often relying, again, on these alternative financial services like money orders and payday loans in order to still do your transaction. So you can have a bank account, but if the bank account doesn't work for you, then you're still considered, unbanked or underbanked. Next slide. And so more recently, the economic impact payments or stimulus checks that were sent out, some research was done. And so many of you may know, some people, if you had a bank account, you got the economic impact payment directly distributed to your bank account, or other people who didn't have a bank account got either a physical check or they received a debit card from the government with their economic impact payment on it. So some data just came out recently that showed that in 2020, with the first and second economic impact payments, over $66.6 million in fees were occurred and used by check cashers for people to get their economic impact payment. So fees are costly. That's money that if these individuals had a BankOn Arkansas account, they could have deposited. The money would have came to them faster because they would have had it directly deposited into their account. And that's less fees that they would have had to pay and more money in their pocket. So next slide. So what are some of the benefits of being banked? As I just mentioned, saving money. Honestly, the average unbanked American spends about $200 to $500 a year on fees. And so with the right account for you, people can keep more of their hard-earned money if they have money that they're getting deposited right into a secure banking institution. And then convenience. Being able to be connected to a banking institution means that you can pay your bills online or you can just pay them quicker. And so, you have additional resources rather than, having to go to a check cashing place or having to go and get a money order and then driving the money order over to, your landlord's house, or going down to Central Arkansas Water and having to pay the bill there at Central Arkansas Water, right? So time is money, as they say. And so for us, we look at the bank accounts as a additional convenience so that people can do their banking transactions without having to actually spend more time on those things. And then savings is always a huge thing with banking, and being able to save for, long-term financial goals. They could be college, they could be, CSA accounts for your kids. So those are things that make banking critical. And then really building a relationship with financial institutions. And so I pause here because, usually when we're in person and I talk to people about this information, I ask them, what is it that you want to do with your money? Do you want to buy a house? Do you want to own a business? Do you want to buy a car? Whatever it is that you want to do, building relationships with your financial institutions early on helps you when you go in to ask for those loans and go in to talk to, loan officers about whatever your future financial goals are. And so it's always great to be able to know somebody or know your financial institution and them to be able to know you, because again, it makes it, helpful and easier down the line when you start thinking about what is your next goal for, obtaining loans or looking for other ways that you can use your financial institution. And then, the last thing and the overall thing is really bank accounts are about building assets for yourselves and contributing to the overall health of the communities that you live in. And so just, having kind of a banking presence in those neighborhood banks and, being able to support, yourself and support the communities that you live in. Next slide. So how do I get started? That's usually somebody's initial question is, okay, I understand. I want to open a bank account. And then, what do I need to do? So most banks will require one or more of the following. And the first thing that they're going to ask for is your name and your date of birth, and they're going to ask you for a valid form of ID to verify the information that you gave them. And this ID information can be broken down into what they call primary IDs and secondary IDs. And so an example of a primary ID is a government issued driver license, an unexpired passport, the state ID card. So even if you don't drive, but you went to the state of Arkansas and they gave you an identification card, those things are usually considered primary forms of ID, as well as some other documents, your birth certificate, things of that nature. Your secondary forms of ID are things that can still be verified. They still tell, convey to people who you are and your name and your date of birth, but they need to be combined with one of these other things that I just mentioned in order for them to be considered kind of valid. So I apologize. That's actually a birth certificate would be within that. If you have a consular ID from one of the local consulates, municipal IDs are taken at some of the banks. And so what a municipal ID is it's an ID that is issued by the city of Little Rock or whatever city that you live in. And they usually will look at that as a secondary form of identification. And so I'm going to say this now, but I'm going to say it a few times throughout the next few slides, but you can always call the bank ahead of time and have somebody walk you through this so you can come in with the proper documentation. And that is what we would probably suggest here at BankOn Arkansas. The other thing that they're going to ask you for is a proof of address. And so they just need to know that you are staying here. And then also banks need that information so they can know where to send your information, like your monthly statement or any other correspondence that they need to have with you. So I know sometimes people are like, why do they need my address? They need it so they can send you information. And the banks do have a requirement in order through their regulatory bodies to get you the information. So they have to have a valid address on file. And so, there's a few things that can help fulfill that requirement. If you come in with a utility bill that is current, right? So usually the banks will say to you, it needs to be within the last 6 months or a year. It can't be from where you previously lived. A lease, so your rental agreement or a lease that you may have. And then again, you can use your current driver's license to kind of verify your address at that point too. But they may also ask you for some more current bills just so they can make sure. And then there's some other just basic information that they'll ask you. Like I said, they'll ask you your date of birth, your social security number, or your taxpayer identification number, which I'll get to here in a moment. And then your phone number so they can contact you. So next slide, I think is where we're headed. Yes. And so I just previously talked about that. And so I just want to stop really quick and talk about an Itin. So Itin is the individual taxpayer identification number. And that is a a bank account, a number that is assigned to you by the federal government. It is, if you don't have a social security number, you can still get a taxpayer identification number. And what that basically just means is that, you pay taxes and you pay it under this number. And so you can open a bank account with that. So if you don't have that, you can go to irs.gov and you can sign up for a Itin number, and the IRS will send you that number. And then once they send you that number, then you'll have that documentation. So then you can go and open a bank account. But we do like to let people know, if you don't have a social security number, you can still get a bank account through other means. And so then also the other thing that banks will probably ask you for is an initial deposit. And those amounts can range. With BankOn Arkansas, we ask for an initial deposit of $25. And so you need to have at least $25 in cash or $25 in a check in order for you to open a bank account. Some banks require more. So again, that's where calling that bank in advance and saying, I'm interested. I want to open a bank account. Can you tell me what I need to bring in with me? They can tell you what that initial deposit amount should be. So I put questions here. I don't know if there are any in the chat. Perfect. So I am going to keep going. And kind of talk a little bit more about the basics of banking. So please, next slide. There we go. So when you go in and you talk to the account manager or the branch manager at the local bank after you've called and you found out from them what it is that you need to do and bring in order to open the account, they will probably say a few terms to you that may or may not be familiar. And so I did want to walk over a few just kind of key terms today, just to help people. If you hear things or if you've heard them before and you didn't quite know what it meant, it's okay. If you don't work in banking, you may not know these things. So it's completely fine to know. So, usually the bank is going to ask you, do you want to open a checking account or a savings account? And there is a difference. So a checking account is an account at the bank or credit union that allows you to make deposits, pay bills, and make withdrawals. So basically, it is a transactional account. You can take money in and take money out. And usually with the checking accounts, by you doing those transactions, you do not incur fees for that, because that is what a checking account is set up to do. It's set up for money to come in and money to go out. A savings account is usually for money set aside for mid to long-term financial goals, right? And so you want to put money in your savings that you don't plan on touching, at least for the time being, or it is there as an emergency fund in case you need it, but it is not something that you're pulling money out of regularly, right? And there are a few reasons for that. One, some savings accounts, depending on how you have them set up, they can actually collect interest. And so you may be drawing down, you may be actually making money off of the money in the savings account. And so you want to kind of keep it there so you can make sure that you're getting your interest. The other thing is, because those accounts are not really designed for you to pull in and out, the banks may place a fee on withdrawing from your savings account, right? And that's there because the banks want you to save, because obviously, as I mentioned, that's what the account is for. So, so you don't want to try to use your savings account as an account that you're going to be, paying bills out of regularly or doing things, because you could start incurring transaction fees from the bank after you pull out a certain amount or after you've had so many transactions. So, automatic clearinghouse, you may have seen this on your paperwork somewhere. And basically, ACH is how electronic transfers happen. So that is basically the place where when you go in and you say, somebody can take money out of my account to pay my bills, or I need to send this money to somebody, or my direct deposits need to come in. All of that goes through the automatic clearinghouse, and that's at all banks. And so that's something that all banks, that's where all of the funding kind of goes through. And again, they are a separate entity, but they work with the banks to make sure that your transactions are done and completed correctly. Next slide. And you'll see ACH on your paperwork at your job. They'll ask you, do you want to do direct deposit? And they'll ask you ACH. That's exactly what that means. So automatic debit payment. With automatic debit payment, there's two things going on. So with automatic debits, you're giving the bank permission to take money from your account to take care of whatever financial transaction that you need to do. Okay. Bill pay works a little bit differently. Bill pay is when you go to your bank and you say, I am giving you permission to send payments to the company. Automatic debit may be where you go to the company and you say, okay, Sally Mae, I'm just using student loans. You can go into my account without me having to confirm every month that you can take this payment. So both are valid. You can use either one to pay your bills, but we just like to remind people that, again, with automatic debit payment, you're giving the company's authorization to go into your bank account. Okay. So if you know you have bills that shift, maybe one month it's $100, but the next month it may be $200, but the next month it may go back down to $100. And if that makes you nervous and you don't know if those funds are going to be available, then, just know that you are authorizing that company to go in and take whatever amount that they are authorized to take for that month. With bill pay, you have a little bit more control because you are the one that's actually signaling to the bank that they can send the money out. And so usually we tell people, if you know that you, again, have a bill that may fluctuate, bill pay may be an option because it will allow you to see what amount is going out before it's sent, rather than the company just kind of, taking the amount that you've authorized. Okay. And so then that leads me to non-sufficient funds. I'm sure we've all seen non-sufficient funds, as they're often called, Nsf Fees. You may see this on your bank statement every month if something happens, or, if something has happened, with your bank account, you will see what they typically call Nsf Fees. And so Nsf Fees just, quickly are when, fees may occur because you don't have the funds in your account. And so usually this is referred to as a returned or bounced check. And so basically Nsf Fees are, you used your debit card or you wrote a check, the money wasn't there, it hit the account. And then once it hit the account, it just stopped payment. Nothing happened. The people weren't paid. So whoever it was that you were going to pay, they didn't pay. They didn't receive payment. Or if you were using a debit card, it'll just say canceled or it won't go through. That's an Nsf fee if you don't have the money in the account. So next slide. And then in addition to Nsf fees, probably the most common thing that people do often also see on their account is overdraft. And so overdraft is a little different from Nsf, okay? Nsf is the technical term, and it just basically means that there was not enough money in the account to cover whatever charge was made. Now, an Nsf fee could just be a fee that hits your account one time, and it just means that, the money wasn't there, but the bill wasn't paid or the transaction wasn't completed. So there weren't any additional fees associated with it. It's just that your Nsf fee hit because you didn't have enough money in the bank, and the bank said, okay, flag that. Overdraft means you didn't have enough money in the bank account, but the bank paid the transaction anyways. And that can be tricky because that can also lead to additional fees. So you may have not had enough money in the bank. the payment came over to the bank, but the bank said, well, this is less than $200. So we'll pay it on your part, but we're going to debit your account. And then we're also going to add on our own fees because we have now paid this back out for you. Okay. Usually you have to sign up for overdraft. Usually banks do not do that without you knowing that they're going to pay this overdraft. But if that money is taken out and that bill is paid through that overdraft, then that is debited still out of your account. And then that's what makes your account go into the negative. And depending on how many transactions you may have had, you may have multiple transactions that are being paid by overdraft. But every time a transaction is happening, not only is that transaction being paid and you're being debited for that, you're also incurring fees. And sometimes the fees can be per transaction, right? So you may have a $25 overdraft that was paid for Applebee's, but then maybe you had a bill that, is automatically debited the next day. And so that was $200 out. And so now instead of you being at $25 from Applebee's and $200, you're now taking on an additional $25 fee for each time that happens. So now you're $275 in debt instead of just being $200 in debt or $225. So that is that has ripple effects. And so, the fees and the overdrafts can lead to larger issues if those are not paid. Some banks, if the overdraft funds are not paid within a certain amount of time, they will close your account. They will report it to collection agencies. So now you have a ding on your credit. And then also some other banks, if they see that you have a closed account at another bank and you try to open up an account at another bank, they'll run something called check systems. Check systems will see that you did not pay or you have a outstanding account at another bank, and you won't be able to open a bank account anywhere else. So there are larger fees larger things that happen through these overdraft fees and through these non-sufficient fund fees. And so we really encourage people as much as you can to not incur those. If you'll go to the next slide. This is a document that we have on our BankOn website, which is www.bankonar.org. It talks a little bit about what happens. This is talking somewhat about, what happens when you have to use costly alternatives. But it's the same thing when you have to take on a fee with your bank account, right? Like if you don't have that cushion in your bank and that money gets taken out through overdraft, then some of the same challenges that occur here are the same things that people will incur again when their bank account goes into non-sufficient funds and overdraft. So next slide. The two biggest things that we try to encourage people to do is just, check your checking. That's literally the easiest way to say it. Is check your checking, check it often. I'm going to talk here in a moment about online banking, but just make sure that you're looking at your account regularly, you're looking at your balance. If you see something happening where it's like, well, I'm not going to have enough money in the bank, but maybe you have one of these automatic payments coming out, call the institution and see if you can make a payment arrangement or see if they will allow you to take out a certain amount that's within your budget so that you don't incur these fees. And then the other thing is, if you like to get overdraft protection, then you should check with your financial institution and they will walk you through that. Most of them usually charge something for overdraft protection. And so that's why I just say to people, if that's something you're interested in, you want to check with your bank and see what their terms are for overdraft protection. But it at least gives you some, sense of mind. But if you know that, your overdraft protection may lead you into further debt because you're going to be incurring some fees, then, again, that may not be, the best choice. So look and talk to your financial institution, find out about their overdraft protection program, and then, make a decision from there. So next slide. I'm going to brief through some of this because I know we're at 7:04 and I want to leave us enough time for questions. So I did want to talk a little bit about online banking, just because that's really the future of banking. We have our brick and mortar stores that you can walk into and you can do your transactions, but there's so much stuff that can happen online. Usually most financial institutions have some sort of mobile app, or even if you don't do it through the app, you can get onto the, your phone in terms of your Google Chrome, or get onto Internet Explorer on your phone and still, do certain financial transactions online through your smartphone. So you can check your balance. I check my balance, me personally, once a day. I do. I check it once a night before I go to bed. And then usually once a week, I keep all my receipts and I try to go through and just make sure, like, okay, this is what cleared, this is what's still pending, and this is wrong, right? Or like this shouldn't show up. So, you do what works for you. That's what personally works for me. But I am a nervous Nelly and I like to know like where my money is and where it's going. Again, if you can see the pending charges, right? So if there are things that are coming up, it helps you to say, okay, I really don't have this much in the bank. I actually have this much because I have 3 pending charges that are waiting to come out. You can set up notifications, and those things will alert you when something happens on your bank account. And this is key right now in the digital age, right? So if a direct deposit comes in, then you have that. Or if a large payment is charged and it's something that you didn't authorize, your banks can let you know instantly and you can stop the charge, or you can close down the account. For your own protection. If your balance falls below a certain amount, some banks will send you a notification on your phone to say, hey, by the way, you're under $25 or you're under $50, or your account is about to go into overdraft. So it helps you, again, to just keep up and monitor your funds. You can deposit checks on some apps. So if you can't make it to the bank, there are some that'll let you take a picture and it'll deposit, on certain apps. And then you can transfer money between accounts or even between financial institutions. So if you have a kid that's in college, or, a spouse, and you just need to get money over quickly, that's one way to do it. And then again, you can usually set up bill pay through most online mobile apps and through financial institutions. Next slide. There we go. And so I just want to say really quickly with the online banking, make sure that you are following the practices that the banks and the financial institutions outline to you in terms of how to keep your account safe. So, there are a lot of people out here who are getting very savvy and, can make people think that they are your bank, but they're not. And so, you just want to make sure that you're keeping up with what your financial institution says and the protections that they offer for online banking, to make sure that you keep your account safe and make sure that you're keeping, your information safe. So I did need to note that. So really quickly, on to BankOn Arkansas. I talked to you all a little bit earlier about what we are and what we do, which again is we provide access to safe and affordable bank accounts. And again, the certified bank accounts are offered at the 14 financial institutions that I'm going to show you momentarily. They require $25 or less to open. So you do have to have, again, that $25. They have a low monthly maintenance fee of $5 or less. So that means every month while your money is in the account, they will charge a $5 fee, but nothing more. And, that's just to make sure that they're keeping the account going and managed and monitored. You have access to online banking. Like I just mentioned, all of the things that online banking can offer. But again, the biggest thing about BankOn Arkansas certified accounts is that they have no overdraft fees. And so BankOn Arkansas accounts are called checklist checking accounts. So you will not get a check. You will only get a debit ATM card with a BankOn account, and that is free. And basically, once the money is out of it, it will stop. So there is no overdraft protection or anything on a BankOn Arkansas account. It is just a no overdraft fee account. And so you will, it will stop your payments once the money is gone, and you won't incur any additional debts or any fees. And again, this is an account that is designed if you are entering the mainstream financial services and you want to do so in a safe way, or if you're re-entering mainstream financial services. BankOn is a product that could work for you. And at certain BankOn certified institutions, they will allow you to open a bank account if you have previously had another account that you have gone into debt with. So you would want to check with the individual bank that I'm going to show you here in a moment, but certain BankOn banks will let you open an account if you had another account and you are in debt at that location or at that account. Okay. Next slide. Oh, I don't know what that is. So next slide. Let's go. Sorry. Can we go up a little? Well, that's not on here. So, could you make me host maybe, and I can show people the BankOn website, and that'd be great. So in a moment, I'm going to show you all the webpage. And again, we have 14 BankOn accounts, 14 financial institution partners that will allow you to open a BankOn account. And they range from large national corporations like JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo, which are not here locally in Arkansas. And here I will drop this in the chat for everyone. Oh, perfect. They range from JP Morgan Chase to other places. And then we have local banks that are here. And this is our webpage. So again, that's www.bankonar.org. And I've listed that in the chat for you. And so when you go on to BankOn, this is the homepage that you will see. Right now, we're talking to people a lot who may be receiving COVID funds and may be receiving, again, unemployment benefits, emergency impact payments. And then I think many of you may know that we're about to start having child care tax credits that will be coming monthly to certain individuals who qualify. Getting a BankOn account or getting a bank account is a quick way for you to receive those funds if you do not have a bank account currently, because those monies will be deposited every month into your certified account. But if you're interested, you can go right here at the top. It says start an account. And then once you go here, it will give you the list of all 14 of those financial institutions. And again, we have large places like Bank of America, and we even have credit unions like Diamond Lake Federal Credit Union, which is a little bit outside of Hot Springs. We have Iberia. And so we have a range. Bank OZK just joined us earlier this year. We have Up Federal Credit Union. And then if you're living here in Central Arkansas, you may have seen that Chase is actually opening branches here in Little Rock. So we run the gamut, and you can look and see which bank account or which bank financial institution feels good for you. And you'll also note that each of the banks have a specific name for their product. it's still under the Bank On umbrella, right? But they still wanted specific names for their product. So if you go into Southern Bancorp and you ask for the opportunity card, it's going to have the same things that we just mentioned to you all on the last slide. It's going to have the $25 opening fee. It's going to be no overdraft. You're going to get a debit card. And so it's still the same features at each of these banks. They just have different names. So make sure that if you're interested in a certified bank on account, you go on here and look and see what the name is before you go to the bank, because usually or you can say a bank on account and they'll usually walk you through it, but it makes it a little easier if you're able to say, well, I want the Sparks banking account at Citizens Bank. Okay. And so that's that. And then we do have some resources as well if you're interested in additional information, not just about Bank on Arkansas, but just about, financial questions and things of that nature. And what, if there are other things that you need to know or be aware of as a person who is interested in understanding the financial sector a little bit more. And then we have a COVID-19 resource page that, again, if you have some more questions, if you want to know more about economic impact payments or other things that could help you kind of weather, even as we're coming out on the other side of COVID, we do have some resources and information here. So with that, it's 7:15. I'm going to stop sharing. And I think we're going to move into questions, maybe.
Thank you, Kara, so much. That you did a tremendous job and gave us a lot of information in a brief amount of time. And I do want to remind everybody listening or watching, if you do have any questions and you have the chat feature, please let us know. And I believe we are looking for, with our tech folks, if somebody wants to ask a question verbally, they'll be able to do that. But while we're waiting, Kara, I did have a question while I was listening to your presentation. When you were talking about bank accounts, is there a certain age someone has to be in order to open a bank account? And then kind of the second part of that question, if I have, let's say, a teenager who is, mowing lawns or walking dogs or, working at Sonic or something, can he or she open up an account as well under my name?
That is a great question, Fran. Thank you for asking that. So usually most financial institutions do ask you to, if you're coming in as an individual, to at least be 18 to open the account if you're a individual. But we do encourage parents to get your children an account as early as you feel that they would be ready for one. And there are accounts for, kids as young as elementary school, right? I know that Simmons Bank has an account that's specifically set up for elementary age children. And I think the idea behind it is that they can put money in it and they get some sort of like trinkets and rewards kind of to teach them the importance of banking. But as soon as your child, has taken on one of these summer jobs or is getting ready to go to college, it is very smart. And what they usually will ask you, if you're an adult, you will have to sign off on the account for the first few years. So if your child is 16, they will have to go to the bank with you. You will have to be a signator and say, yes, they can have this account. And then when they turn 18, obviously it will turn into their account. But the sooner the better, the earlier the better, because I think that financial habits are things that have to be learned. And so, we expect people to go to college and know all about finance, and that's just not true. You have to kind of be taught those skills.
Great. Well, it looks like we have a question here. Are there typically additional fees for checks and debit cards with bank on accounts?
There are none. Thank you for that question, Thomas. And so, again, bank on accounts are what we're calling checking accounts. So you will not get any checks with a bank on account. They just don't come with them. The debit feature, again, is designed to monitor your finances. And as soon as, you try to complete a transaction that's over the amount that's in the account, it will just deny it. So you just won't be able to go over. There's no way you can go over because they won't process the transaction. So there aren't any additional fees to any of that because you won't be going over, and there's no concern with that. So that's where the no overdraft fee protection part is really key for these accounts.
Okay. And just a reminder, if anybody wants to ask a question, but not via chat, if you'll let us know through the chat that you're interested in asking a question, we can open it up to where you'll be on the Zoom and make sure your audio's on. So when you were talking about, and I thought this was great that you brought this up, the importance of building relationships or building a relationship with a banking institution. If I wanted to just sit down and visit with someone, I mean, are there fees just to visit? I mean, there are all these, some people think you get fees for everything, but I mean, if I just want to make an appointment to go talk to a banker or a representative, do I have to pay for that time?
Yeah, that honestly is a really good question, Fran. So Bank On actually started as a way to help people feel more comfortable about going into banks.
Yeah, it's intimidating.
It is, exactly. And so this was a way to say, here's a safe, account and a very structured account that helps people feel comfortable that they go into the bank. But to your point, there are no fees. Even if you're interested in a loan or you're interested in learning more about home ownership and you just want to know more information, that's what the banks are there for. They will not charge you, and they will not, try to sign you up for anything. It is perfectly reasonable for someone to say, I am interested in obtaining a car loan. I want to know more information. I'm not ready right now, but when I am ready, I just wanted to make sure I have that information. And loan officers, branch managers, they will be happy to sit down with you and kind of walk you through that process, tell you what you need up front. You can ask questions, and I think that that's honestly the smart thing to do. Particularly, again, I'm just using loans as an example, but you can ask what is the minimum credit score you're looking for? What are some of
that will vary. That will vary from bank to bank, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Everybody has different standards. And so you being able to ask that will give you a better idea of what your profile is and what you're looking for and what you need to be building up to. And then they can walk you through the options. They may say to you, well, we actually do have some low credit loans or low credit score loans. It may not mean you can take out as much as you want, but it can get you started. And so yeah, so you can walk through those options. And I encourage everybody to do that because, again, that relationship with that financial institution is going to be key for those long-term goals that you may have.
Okay, great. And actually, I had another question.
Yeah, please.
I'm watching here, and if somebody else wants to chime in, please do. But this day and age with so many hacks and finding out different accounts, I mean, I would imagine the banks are constantly trying to, because with, like you said, mobile banking is, quote, the way that we're all, it's amazing to me that we can shoot a picture of a check and it's deposited.
I know.
But can you kind of shed some light on what some of the safety issues are with that?
Yeah, so that's why I said, you want to make sure that you connect with your financial institution. I do know that all financial institutions are working on, various levels of security, whether it is, requiring people to change their passwords a certain amount of time or requiring additional verification on top of you just logging in. The other thing that I would suggest is, as you are talking to your bank about online banking, they usually can send you either email or text. Sometimes they can send you text notifications for to verify to you that this is your bank talking to you, and not a hacker.
Right.
Hackers are very good. They can make things look just like your bank would. And so, you can sign up for those additional protections. I know I have that, for me personally. So where my bank sends me a text, and that even is whether I log in or I don't. Again, like if somebody else tries to log in, my bank will send
notification.
And say somebody just tries to log into your account. Was it you? So again, those protections are in place. The last thing I'll say about that, Fran, is with a lot of people using the mobile banking apps, a lot of them are somewhat connected to the FDIC and other places, but bank accounts are insured, right, through a traditional financial institution.
Okay.
So up to a certain amount. And so that is one of the things that we talk about is, I understand, and that's fine to use Zillow. I'm not Zillow. Zillow is looking for houses, but that's you should use Zillow, but you should also, if you are using, Cash App and some of these other things, make sure you're checking the terms. Make sure that that it's safe, because, some of those apps are not structured under the FDIC, but you're still putting in your bank account information in there. So somebody
handing the keys to the car.
Handing the keys to the car. So that's why we always say having access to your traditional bank account using that app is going to be a little bit probably safer. And again, you have that FDIC insurance with it.
Sure. All right. Well, we have a few more questions, and then I know we're about done with time, and I do want to let folks know that at the very end here, we're going to put up a screen with all of Kara's contact information. So if you wanted to follow up with her directly, you'll be able to see her information here in just a second. But it's kind of these two. So one question was, do formerly incarcerated people have access to BankOn accounts? And it seems like you had alluded to helping folks rebuild kind of.
We do. Yeah, we do. And we can. And so the bigger issue there is making sure that people have the documentation, because you still will need those forms of ID in order to open the account. But yes, it doesn't matter if you were formerly incarcerated, or again, if you've used, if you maybe have a bank account that maybe went into overdraft at another institution. Certain BankOn accounts will still let you open the account at their bank under this program. So, but yes, it's open for anyone, and specifically for incarcerated individuals. We just want to make sure that we have up-to-date documents in order to get them in.
And then would the same apply to folks who perhaps have filed bankruptcy?
You can still get a BankOn account. The only thing that they're going to check is, again, the thing that I talked about earlier, which is called check systems. Check systems is looking for fraud. So now if you have committed fraud, you usually will not be able to open a BankOn account. You usually won't be able to open any banking account, because fraud is a serious thing. But you can have had a bankruptcy on your credit and things of that nature, but still be able to open a BankOn account.
Great. All right. Well, I want to allow time for your contact information to be up. And again, I just want to thank everybody. And while that information is up, let me just say that at the conclusion of the 4 weeks, because this is one of 4, so next Tuesday, the next 3 Tuesdays at this exact same time, we'll have other sessions. And the one next Tuesday is basics of budgeting and savings. So so Kara kind of helped lay the foundation. So we'll get into a little bit more about how to create a budget and kind of some tips and tricks on how to build your savings. And Catherine Jones with Orion Federal Credit Union is going to present that. And at the conclusion of the 4 weeks, we're going to have what the library has, these grab and go bags. So each of our presenters are giving us some tools and some resources to put in that bag. And so at the conclusion of the 4 weeks, on that May 11th session, we'll have details about where participants can go to pick up those bags. So again, come back next Tuesday night. Just like you did for tonight, you'll go to the CALS website and register. And please tell your friends, family, anybody who you think can benefit from what we're doing here. And again, on behalf of the State Treasurer's Office and CALS, thank you all for giving us an hour tonight.